This show is not intended for the politically correct or the closed-minded. Enter at the risk of opening your eyes. You have been warned.
Why does the media attack an issue? To get primetime ratings?
In my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
A moment comes when we step out from the old to the new, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
To kind of catapult the propaganda.
You are listening to Open Eyes with your host, Ira Robinson. From the normal to the paranormal, from government cover-ups to the depths of our consciousness, we aim to explore all things. From the dawn of prehistory to current events, no topic is forbidden and nothing remains hidden.
No more secrets.
Open your eyes and open your mind to the fact that life as we know it is not as we have been taught. Join us at latenightinthemidlands.com or openeyesnetwork.com as we take this brief journey through the depths of the cosmos and explore what it really means to be human.
Many peoples have sacrificed their liberties, only to learn to their sorrow that deceit and mockery, poverty and tyranny are their reward.
Whether you're online or offline, intercontinental or intergalactic, hello and welcome to Open Eyes. It is a Friday. It is the 1st of December, and boy, we've got a really good show in store for you tonight. If you want to call in tonight, as always, you can do so. 260-494-3937 is the call-in number. Our Skype line is JDA Film, and as always, we're over in the chat room at LNMRadioNetwork.com. You guys can also find us on our homepage, OpenEyesNetwork.com, and get the chat room over there as well, if you so desire. Don't forget, we are also live streaming over onto YouTube at youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network, and hit that subscribe button while you're over there, and you'll get notified of when we put out a new show, when we put out a new video, when we've got all kinds of good stuff going on. Yes, indeed. I am there all the time. So anyways, we are live and we have a guest coming on with us tonight, Dr. Clete Bulach, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. He's very much into dealing with humans and how they interact with each other and all that kind of great stuff. You guys know that's a topic of very special interest for me as well, so I think that it's going to be a really interesting show. Don't forget that I'm also going to be on tonight with Michael Vera on the roundtable here in just a couple of hours. Like right after this show is done, we're swinging right into going into Late Night in the Midlands, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that as well. But anyways, let me go ahead and bring my guest in here with us, Dr. Clete Bulach. Hello, Dr. Clete. How are you?
Hey, Ira. Good to be on your show.
It is really my pleasure to have you here tonight, and I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. I love the work that you've done, and I love the things that you've gotten into. You've written a couple of books, including one about here in Indiana. But anyways, you've written a couple of books that very much interest me as far as dealing with the schools and that kind of thing is concerned. And you've also done a lot of work in dealing with interpersonal connections. How did you get involved with that kind of stuff?
Well, back in my doctoral dissertation, I had a good one going and my chair died, and I had to get another one. And I got onto, at the University of Idaho, an 8-week interpersonal seminar dealing with interpersonal communications and so forth. And I did my dissertation on the relationship of openness, trust, and risk-taking. That was my doctoral dissertation back in the 70s, and I've been kind of intrigued with those concepts ever since. Openness and trust are key human relations concepts. They are the foundation of any relationship. When you first start dating, how open should you be with your date? How much should you trust them with? And which comes first? It's a chicken or an egg kind of concept. If I'm open with somebody, will they trust me? If I trust them, will they be open with me?
Yeah.
And it goes back and forth. You really don't know which is first. And I'll be honest, my own opinion is openness comes first. Openness has two concepts, two factors. There's a listening and a telling factor. A lot of people are open on the telling factor, but not on the listening factor.
This is true.
You call it the bull in the china shop. You've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the person who tells you what you need to know. The listening factor is the most important factor. Listening conveys that you care. You want to hear what the person says. You think they're important. So, in my opinion, listening is the most important human relations factor. What do you think about that?
I definitely cannot disagree. For me, being a radio show host, that's one of the primary things that I do is I have to be a listener. So for me, definitely it is there. I love hearing people's stories, and actually that's one of the reasons why I got into writing fiction, was because I love telling stories, number one, but I love to integrate the stories that I've learned over the years interacting with people into what I write.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so definitely listening is an important one. With that in mind, with listening being such an important thing, how do you recommend people get into doing that? Because just asking questions probably is the best way, but not every question is appropriate, is it?
No. Chapter 1 in my second book describes the 5 basic interpersonal communication skills, which would be at the heart of communications. Paraphrasing is the skill that most listeners use. Are you familiar with that skill?
I am indeed, yep.
Okay. And of course, as a school superintendent, with parent conferences, expelling kids and putting them into suspension and so forth, they are almost always very angry because you're treating their kid that way. And they would tell me what they thought, and I would say, "This is what I heard you say," and I would paraphrase back to them what they said. And they knew that I was listening to them and that I cared about them. And to some extent, I trusted them and that I was open. And that was a big, big way to deal with the conflict that we had. Paraphrasing is a very important concept, skill to use to show that you're listening. Asking questions is another good way. And of course, when you ask questions, why questions tend not to be good questions.
Right.
Do you follow me on that?
Yep. And that's the one that a lot of kids are very good at asking.
Yeah. Because why questions automatically make people defensive. Why did you do that? Why this? Why that? Because it makes the other person defend their action, which shuts down communications. What type questions? What could I have done better? What were you thinking when that happened? What questions are open questions? Why questions are shut down questions? I don't know where you're going to have to lead this conversation, Ira, because I can go off on a lot of different ways here.
Well, with the what questions, that's actually a very important aspect of my own writing, because when I do writing and I'm trying to come up with an idea for a story or for how to explain something to somebody, I always ask the question, what if? And that always leads me into expanding into a lot of different things. So I'll start off with, what if on a very large scale, what if this pen that I'm holding in my hand was not a pen, right? So, just something stupid, right? But then, from there you can keep asking the what if questions and delve deeper and deeper. So that same type of thing really is effective with dealing with interpersonal things as well. What if you had decided to do this? What would you have seen happen? Or, things like that to kind of twist the mind a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. One of the other interpersonal communication skills that I've used quite successfully over time to convey to people that I care about them and that I'm listening and that I trust them is perception checking, and I'm sure you've used that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. When I told you, for example, I might have said something to a client or a person that's in my office, and I said, when I said this about that, I noticed you had this look on your face. Did I upset you? Oh, no. I've got a stomach ache, and, the response might be, I've got a stomach ache, and that was... No, there's nothing there. So perception checking is a second communication skill, and it's very, very important. The communication skill that's the most important, I think, is behavior description. Many times in human relations, you're in a group or in a duo, two people, or whatever, and you notice something about the other person's behavior. And you make a judgment about that behavior. Most people do. They'll make a judgment about that. They'll think, oh, that guy doesn't like what I said. So you describe the behavior you saw that made you think that. And you say, I noticed when I said this that you crossed your arms. Did I say something that offended you? That's a double. You use behavior description. You describe the behavior you saw, and you made a perception check. Okay, that's a double. If you were to come up with the judgment that, well, I must have upset you when I said that, didn't I? That's a judgment.
That's a totally different. That'll put somebody on the defensive really quickly.
Right. Anytime you see a behavior on another person and you make a judgment about it, you're going to put the other person on the defensive. If you want to open up communications, you describe the behavior you saw. When I was an assistant principal, disciplining roughly 40 kids a day in a inner city school in Cincinnati, Ohio, I would, when the kids came in to my office, the teacher who sent them in had to give me the exact behavior the kid did. Instead of saying, Johnny was rude, Johnny disrespected me, Johnny yelled at, when I first got there, I would get all these reports of kids who needed discipline, and they would have judgments on them. And I got all the teachers to write behaviors that they did. So when the kid came in, I would say to the kid, what did you do to get sent to my office? And the kid would have to describe the behavior that was on my sheet. And then I would, after we talked and got it out, I would say to the kid, well, this is what I expect you to do when you leave my office. And I would say, now give me your understanding of what I expect you to do. I asked them to paraphrase what I told them to do. They couldn't leave my office until they could adequately paraphrase what I expected them to do when they left my office. So that was the interpersonal communication skill. Parents who are listening on your network right now, or anybody listening on your network network who has to discipline somebody who's been brought to them for a problem. You find out what the behavior was that they did, and then you come up with what you expect them to do. They can't leave your office until they can paraphrase back to you, or they can't leave the parents until they can paraphrase back to you what you expect them to do. Because many people don't hear what you're saying. So by making them paraphrase back, you know for sure that they have heard the message.
Sure, it's sort of a proof of concept type of an idea.
Yeah. That's the two factors of openness: listening and telling. In many cases, you are telling them what you expect, but are they listening? Did they hear it? Trust. I think if you're a good listener, you will establish trust, because throughout my 2 books, the concept of servant leadership is the style of leadership that I promote. There's self-serving leadership, and if you were to talk to many teachers, employees, they will view their supervisor as self-serving.
I would venture to say many of them are, yes.
But if you were to ask them, are you here to serve the people below you, or are you here to serve yourself? Oh, I'm here to serve them. Well, why are they saying that you are self-serving then?
Because perception is everything, right?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because perception is like 90% of how people believe about a person.
Yeah. Here's a technique that I propose in Chapter 2 of Book 1. It's called the expectations diagnosis. As a superintendent, as a college professor, and as a principal, I always gave the employees 3 3x5 cards somewhere during my tenure there. Usually I did it the first meeting with them, but you have people listening who are in December. They may have gotten the job in September or whenever, and they're no longer in the beginning of their leadership. But you can use this technique anytime, like tomorrow or Monday when you go back to work. Or if you're a parent and you've got a couple of kids, you can use it with them. It's the expectations diagnosis. What do you expect of me as your superintendent, as your principal, as your supervisor, as your father, as your whatever? Whatever your position is, you can use it yourself, Ira, with the group that supports you. What do you expect of me? You give them 3 3x5 cards, and they say, you want us to tell you what we expect? Yeah, I want to know what you expect. Okay, now the question would become, why would you do that? Well, because the people below you come from many different cultures. You may have a Latino, you may have a Oriental, you may have some blacks, you may have some rich people, you may have some poor people. You got females, you got males. They come from different cultures. The culture they come from has values and beliefs about how people should treat them. You are the leader. Do you know what they expect of you as their leader? You don't have a clue, do you?
I would say no, because unless you've asked, you won't know. You might have an idea, but you won't know for sure.
Right. So if you give them 3x5 cards and you give them 3, that's what I usually recommend, 3, but you can give them 4 or 5, or whatever. You will find out from them what they value and believe their leader should do, their father should do, their mother should do, their counselor should do, and so forth. And when I get those cards, I sort them into piles, and I paraphrase what's in each common pile, and I go back to them and I say, this is what you said you expect me to do. I am going to do my best to meet those expectations. Here's one expectation I don't think I can meet. But it says to them, I'm open to you, I trust you, I'm listening to you, I care about you. That's what a servant leader does to the people that they are serving. That's one technique. Now, I use a second technique somewhere along the way. I go back to them with a sheet of paper, and I have 2 sentences on that sheet of paper. And I've used this over and over and over in my career. Mr. Bulach is a good teacher because, complete that sentence as many times as you want. Second sentence, Mr. Bulach would be a better teacher if, complete that sentence as many times as you want. So I had 120 students. You think I didn't get feedback?
Kids are very opinionated.
It changed my teaching dramatically because I had honest feedback. I had some students who loved me and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And I had some students who hated me and they couldn't find anything good about me. But in between all of that, when I was a principal, I used it. When I was a superintendent, I used it. When I was a college professor, I used it. How do you get good feedback from the people you are leading? That's the best technique I have ever used. It's called force field analysis, developed by Clete Bulach back in 1957. If you go on the web and look that up, Clete Bulach's force field analysis is very complicated. He has rating and ranking and a system. But this simple technique of just 2 sentences, force field, is good because force is for would be better if force is against. It's not a negative approach. It's a way of saying to the people you're leading, hey, guys, I care about you. I want to do a better job. I'm listening to you. I trust you. Servant leadership. That's the second best technique I can use on that. Where do you want to go from here,
Well,
Ira?
it's a great way to self-evaluate as well, because a lot of times we have our own perceptions about ourselves that we have completely wrong, that other people are not perceiving about us. So it's a good way to figure out, what we're really putting out there to people.
Yeah, getting honest feedback is very important because when you have a supervisor evaluate you, he's going to tell you what he thinks or she thinks is going to best improve the relationship between the two of you. And you may not get honest feedback. You're going to get their perception, but it may not be about you. It may be about them.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, if you listen to what's going on TV right now with Maurer and Rose and all the other guys, you can imagine the feedback they gave some of their employees to get what they wanted.
Yep. I was just going to bring up, actually, as far as politicians goes, politicians are very good they're in positions where they're supposed to be, actually, technically speaking, servant leaders, but they're very good about making that perception there. Oh, well, I'm here to help you. I'm here to make a change and, yada, yada, etc. But their actual actions show that they're nothing more than self-serving.
That's correct. And it is amazing about politicians. When they first get into office, they are servant leaders. They listen to the people who are going to vote for them. They cater to them. They have their phone. But after they've been in office 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years, it's all about self-serve.
Yeah.
You look at Obama. The guy, he had almost no money going into office, and what is he now? A multimillionaire with and on with how these guys fill their own pockets.
Yep, exactly.
We started out with openness and trust. We didn't get into the 5 factors that make up trust, did we?
No, we didn't, and I was actually going to bring that up. How do we know, as far as trust is concerned? With how do we get to a point where we avoid trusting the wrong people, for instance?
Well, there are 5 factors that determine trust. Ability is one of them, right? You see what they can do, and you say, yeah, guy is a good president. On ability, President Clinton ranked high on ability, right?
Yeah, he did. Yep.
He really did. He was a good president in that term. But on the second trust factor, truthfulness, he was awful.
It depends on what your definition of is.
Truthfulness is a second trust factor. The third trust factor is an overall character factor. Authenticity. Are you who you say you are? On that particular factor, Obama was not trustworthy because nobody knew who he really was. Was he a Muslim? Was he a Christian? Did he really graduate from whatever, law school? Was he really an American? Was he really, who he says he was? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Okay, so now we got three other factors: truthfulness, ability, and an overall character factor. And in that character factor is servant leadership and caring. Does the person come across as a caring person? Do they come across as serving the people? In Obama's case, he came across as self-serving with all of his golf outings and with all of his vacations and the money. His wife had how many servants and on with the money that was spent during that presidency.
Yep.
Trump, on the other hand, in my opinion, and that's strictly what it is, an opinion, is a servant leader. He wants to make America great again. But he comes across as self-serving. Do you agree with that?
I would, yes. I've been a supporter of him, and there are times where I'm like, that was kind of dumb, But then at the same time, I see that he's doing a decent job with what he said he wanted to do. So
yeah, he does some dumb things. I'd have to agree.
Sometimes he seems to get into his own way.
He comes across as self-serving to a lot of people.
Yeah,
and when in reality, what he says is servant leadership. He is there to serve the people of the United States. And in that process, so far, he has been a good servant. I mean, my stock portfolio, I've been drawing on it hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I've still got more money than I had when I started pulling out. It's just amazing. But anyway, that's the third factor. This character factor of caring, authenticity, and servant leadership. The fourth factor is predictability. If a leader is predictable, when you take a problem to your dad or your mom and they handle it the same way every time, you will trust them with the problem. If you take a problem to them one time and they says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I will take care of that. I'm glad you brought that problem to me. I appreciate it. Thank you." Now, the next time you take a problem to them, they say, "What the heck was that all about? I don't see anything wrong with that. It looks to me like you screwed up." Totally unpredictable.
It's a good way to give a kid a complex.
If you are that kind of leader, when problems are brought to you, you handle them in different ways. And to some extent, that's Trump. He is unpredictable as all get out. You never know what he's going to do when a problem comes his way. You hear what I'm saying?
Indeed. And it's, as a parent, if you're a parent in doing that kind of thing, that's kind of a good way to give a kid a complex, right?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, that is his biggest weakness that he is unpredictable when it comes to dealing with problems. He's been very predictable with North Korea. He's been very predictable with Iran. But with some of the stuff that comes across his desk in the United States, you don't know. With the thing that happened in the Clete, whatever, that situation out in California, he was predictable there. So when I think back on it, in some cases, he's more predictable than I thought. But anyway, the fifth trust factor is confidentiality. That's been a big problem with the Trump administration, the leaks.
Yeah.
People get information in confidence and they leak it out. And I'm thinking that there's a lot of distrust amongst the cabinet in the Trump administration. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I think one of the main problems that is going on with it is that people, again, because of the unpredictability of things, they didn't expect him to be the way that he actually is. They weren't prepped for it because they're used to dealing with politicians that have a certain type of attitude when they come into office. They're used to that kind of thing, and he's kind of derailed that idea. You know?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. Well, those are the 5 trust factors. There is a survey on my website that measures those 2 openness factors, listening and telling, and the 5 trust factors, and it's free. Anybody can send me an email and ask me to attach it to my response, and I will send them the survey back. The survey can be used to measure openness and trust within a group. As it's written now, that's the way it is, because I used it to measure openness and trust in schools. And would you believe that out of 11 culture and climate factors, openness and trust are the 2 lowest?
You know, that doesn't surprise me. I've had, while I've got 3 kids myself, I went through the educational system myself as well. And a lot of times, the students, they don't really have the ability, at least in the experiences that I've had, to come to the administrations with different aspects of problems that they're being perceived and actually get any sort of results out of it. It's very difficult, I think, for most kids to be heard, at least to a point. So, I mean, what can be done about that? Do you have any ideas?
Well, we'll move into that next, because it's the 5 needs of all people.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and take a break then real quick?
And what you just said is one of those needs.
Okay.
But openness and trust, the survey measures openness and trust between faculty.
Okay.
They are not open and trusting with each other.
Gotcha.
Now, can you imagine what happens in a marriage relationship if the husband and wife aren't open and trusting?
Yeah, it leads to a really bad situation really quickly.
In any organization, if openness and trust are not there, it's dysfunctional.
Yep, exactly.
And that's why our schools are so, ineffective. Why test scores are so low, because if the teachers don't trust each other and aren't open with each other, it's a dysfunctional school. If the teachers don't trust their principal and aren't open with their principal and are afraid to go to them with problems, it's dysfunctional. And it's sad to say, but our schools, and many of them, are dysfunctional because of that. In the state of Georgia, the State Department did a survey on the school climate in the schools of Georgia. Out of 2,600 schools, only 200 had a good culture and climate. Roughly 50% were okay, and then you had 20% that were toxic. And that's a sad indictment on our schools. But what you mentioned about kids and teachers trusting them, every person That's you, that's me, that's kids, that's autistic kids, that's kids with emotional problems, that's people in prison, that's soldiers with traumatic stress disorders, post-traumatic, have 5 basic needs, okay? Philosophers have been talking about this going back to the 1800s. And if you look back on that and look at why do people behave the way they do, the first philosopher says, well, that's easy. They behave the way they do because they want to survive. They want to live. They want to be okay. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that is his bottom need. Okay, so that need must be met. The second need they came up with was, people want to be happy. That's why they behave the way they do. Well, yeah, moments of happiness are very important. If there's no happiness in your life, you're a miserable person, right?
Indeed.
Okay, so if you're happy at times and you're not anxious about your survival and stressed out, you feel pretty good, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Along comes Nietzsche. Have you heard of Nietzsche?
Yes.
19th century philosopher.
Oh, yeah.
An atheist, one of the most prolific philosophers in the world about describing about life. He says, oh, yeah, life and happiness are important, but there's one other need that's more important. He says it's power. People behave the way they do because they want power. When you look at what's going on today, North Korea, Syria, Russia, Putin, Trump, power, the Senate, the Democrats, the Republicans, and on with what's going on in our world today, it's all about power. Because with power, you get control. So in my book, I talk about the fifth need. The third need is control. It's not power, it's control.
Right.
With power, you get control. And I don't know if we're going to have time for this, Ira, but in Chapter 4, I describe the 9 forms of power. We might want to go there next after this if we have time.
Okay.
There are 9 ways to get control. Only 9 ways. And I defy anybody listening out there to come up with a 10th way. Now, the 10th way, of course, is God. You can pray to God and get control, but I don't deal with that in my book. I deal with the other 9 ways that humans use to gain control over other humans, okay? So control is the third need. And you can talk about, have you ever heard of Albert Camus' The Heart of Darkness?
I have, yeah.
Okay, it's all about power. And absolute power corrupts. Moby Dick is another one about power.
Yes.
There's a lot of books have been written about power and how ultimate power corrupts. If you think back on Richard Nixon, with the landslide victory he had, ultimate power corrupted him.
It did, yes.
Yeah, it did, and it does to most human beings. If you give any human being ultimate power, there are very few that don't become self-serving and corrupt.
It's interesting with that. The thing that comes to my mind is there was an experiment, I think it was done at Stanford, where they had a group of people that acted as prison guards and another group of people that acted as prisoners. And within 4 days, they had to stop the experiment because it had gone so horribly wrong, where the prison guards started to be abusive and corrupt. And I mean, you name it, basically, they were doing it to these people that were prisoners. And yet they were schoolmates just the few days before.
It is amazing. Human beings are amazing. That scenario has been played out over the past couple of centuries, many times, where ultimate power corrupts. So that's the third basic need, control. Many kids go to school who have no control. As a matter of fact, in my book, I describe schools as more controlling than prisons. Students have less freedom in schools than prisoners do in prisons.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one who says that.
Yeah, it's I have compared the two so many times. You know, you've got groups of kids, especially now, where they are walking down the hallway in single file. They can't talk to each other.
Right.
You know, they're not even allowed to talk in the lunchrooms to each other, and yeah, it just goes on, and it's insanity to me.
Yeah. So kids go to school. They have no control. They must study what they're told to study. They must obey the rules. And, you know, their teacher hasn't said to them, what do you expect of me as your teacher? Teacher hasn't said to them, what rules do you want enforced in this classroom? And so forth. The teachers haven't given control. The secret to being a leader all throughout my two books is give control to people without giving it up. And that's what successful parents do. They give control to their kids, but they never give it up. So you give your kids choices. You say, well, what are you going to wear tomorrow? Show me. The kid goes to the room and picks out his clothes, and the parent says, oh, that looks great. Kid picks out a lousy outfit, and the parents say, oh, I don't know about that. Those colors don't match. Why don't you try something else? So the parent gives control back to the kid. The kid takes out another outfit. Parent says, still not looking quite right. Try again. Gives control back. Until the kid comes up with the right choice, the parent doesn't say, okay. If the kid doesn't come up with the right choice, he says, I'll tell you what, I like what you did with that, but here, try this. And hands them the choice the parent finds acceptable. Give control without giving it up is what parents have to do. And if you go to Walmart, you're going to see parents every day who've given up control to the kids. It's not a pleasant scene.
No, it is definitely not. I've definitely can get behind you there. I you know, when it comes to that control factor, a lot of people try to say that that's maybe one of the main problems with the generation that we have today, coming up. You know, this millennial generation is that the parents sort of gave control over and tried to become, you know, best friends with their children as opposed to actually having any kind of a controlling input with their children.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly, Ira. The fourth basic need, we've got survival, life, stress, anxiety, then happiness, then control. And control needs vary greatly across the people in the world. Some people have a very low need to control, and others have a high need to control. The bully, for example, has a high need to control, and of course uses that need to bully victims. And the victim has a need to control, and that need is not being met. And if you are a victim of a bully, you have to do something to get your control needs met. And how are you going to do that? The victim of a bully has quite an assortment of choices. They can take drugs, they can take alcohol, they can join a gang. A gang gives you support, control. You cannot go to school. You can get a gun and go back to school and shoot somebody. You can commit suicide. The victim has to get their control needs met in one way or another, and all people are the same. But the need for control varies greatly between people. Most leaders have a high need to control. That's why they become leaders. But unless they learn to give control to the followers without giving it up, they will not be successful. They'll last 2 to 3 years before they move on to the next assignment. Does that make sense with you?
It does, yeah.
Okay, so now we get to the fourth need, caring. What would it be like for you to wake up tomorrow, Ira, and realize that nobody cared about you? Not a soul.
You know, if you would have asked me that 20 years ago, I might have said I don't care. But nowadays, no, I would not be very pleased at all.
No.
It would be a horrible situation.
Caring is a very important need for most people. And if you look at the research on nature versus nurture with babies who are not held, who are not cared for, they don't do nearly as well as those who are picked up and nurtured. So caring is a basic human need, human relations need. Now, many kids go to school believing the teacher doesn't care, and I've interviewed thousands and thousands of teachers. Every school district in the state of West Virginia, I had a contract to evaluate. And so I interviewed thousands of teachers in every school district in that state, and thousands of kids in every school district in that state in 2002. I asked them, what do you like about your school? And they said, the teachers. And I said, what don't you like about your school? And they said, the teachers. Oh, well, tell me about that. Well, you know, some of these teachers care about us. They'll listen to us. They really do their best to help us get good grades and learn. And then you've got these other teachers who come in there with their cup of coffee and they prop their feet up on their desk and they look at us and say, all right, guys, I'm here to teach. If you're here to learn, we're going to get along just fine. They don't care about us. All they want is their paycheck. They can't wait till they get their retirement.
There are some
heard that over and over and over.
There are some that just they go to the class, they hand out the packets, and they don't talk to the kids. They don't do anything. They just literally sit there at the front of the class. That's not teaching. You know, that's really not teaching. No.
Well, anyway, kids go to school believing the teachers don't care. Many kids do, but you know I'm talking 50%. The other 50%, the teachers do care about them because they are listening. They are learning. They are glued to the teacher. They're doing what the teacher says. So they are getting lots of caring messages, but the ones who are C, D, and F students are getting non-caring messages. We did the research on this. There is a survey on my website that measures caring behaviors of teachers, and it's free. Anybody out there listening can get it. Send me an email, and I'll email it to you. But it identifies 5 caring behaviors of teachers. And if you're a teacher listening to this and you want to find out how you come across, get my survey and give it to your students. They'll tell you which behaviors you're good at, and which ones you're not good at. And roughly 50% of the teachers have poor marks on caring behaviors. So you get to the 5th need, and this is a need you've heard Rick Warren, you've heard Dr. Oz, you've heard Gandhi talk about purpose in life. Life with no purpose is no life. When people retire, many times they have no purpose. And within a few short years, they die.
Yep.
That's happened to a lot of people who retire.
It really has, yeah.
Now, in my life, my purpose is I want to improve life for people in schools and otherwise. So that's why I do these human relations talks, hoping that somebody will get something out of it and improve their life. So kids go to school. I ask kids, why do you go to school? And they say, what do you mean? Why? I says, why do you go to school? Well, we have to. You mean if you didn't have to go, you wouldn't go? No, I don't like school. I used to say, what do you like about school? And they said, the teachers. And I said, what else do you like about school? And they said, going home, recess. It was never it was seldom what we're going to learn about but from a lot of the kids, the 50% that were the A students, it was. The research we did on caring behaviors, A students believe their teachers care. C and D students believe the teachers don't care. The B students didn't care whether their teachers cared. That was crazy. And I was a B student going through high school, and I really didn't care what my teachers thought. I didn't care. For some reason, that was not important to me, and I guess that's true of most B students. At least the research we did shows that. But the C and D students believed their teachers did not care. The A students believed the teachers do care. Crazy. So you have the 5 basic needs. You got kids, 50% of the kids go to school with no purpose. They're there because they have to be there. They believe the teacher doesn't care. They believe the other kids don't care. They have no control. They're not happy. And some of them are stressed out because of the way they're treated by bullies and by other students. Now, how is that kid going to be motivated to learn? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, the motivation thing, motivation factor is such a big aspect of success in school. I think a lot of students just don't have it. They don't.
No,
they don't have it.
No, they don't. Did you say you were a teacher?
No, I've never been a teacher.
Okay.
Well, I did teach. I did teach adults. I did adult education, but it was only for a specific thing. I was teaching adults how to do repairs on computers and that sort of thing. So I guess you could say, in a way, yes, but.
Yeah, but all of your students were motivated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You got 50% of the kids in school today who are not motivated. They're just there. They're taking up seats. And most schools do not have a culture and climate that motivates the kids.
Yeah.
The process I just describe in both books will motivate the kids. It gives the kids ownership. It gives them control without giving it up. As a matter of fact, the teachers have more control than they ever had. And of course, we didn't come here to describe how to create that environment in a school. We came here to talk about human relations in general. You want to move to the 9 forms of power, Ira?
Yeah, sure.
Do you need to take a break?
Well, I was going to say we can go ahead and skip the break since we've only got you for about another 15 minutes or so here. That way we have enough time to make sure you get the ability to get out.
Which would you rather talk about? The 9 forms of power to motivate people or conflict management? Ooh,
interesting. Well, why don't we do conflict management? Because that's actually something that I think is really important today. There is, we see so much conflict going on in the world at large. Of course, with the big political things.
But the press is full of it.
Yeah.
Of course,
but
I think conflict.
I think
conflict management. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think one of the main reasons why we see so much of the conflict going on in the world at large is that so many people have issues with conflict management in their own personal, relationships. It's like a mirror reflection. What's happening in our lives here in the mass is being reflected on the larger scale.
You're right. Chapter 2 and book number 2 deals with conflict management. It boils down into one chapter what you will find in many books on the subject, conflict management. There are books written on that. But I boiled it down into one common sense approach to conflict. There are 5 ways to deal with conflict, okay? Each of the ways has a win or lose. Somebody wins or loses in each of the ways. The Trump's conflict management style that is exhibited most on TV is what I call competitive. And it's I win, you lose. So with the news media, he is determined to win and they are going to lose. He competes with them, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And with the when in the run-up to the interviews to who was going to be the candidate, he took on each of the candidates competitive. I win, you lose, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Poor Marco, Lion Ted, and on
yeah.
with how he dealt with the candidates.
Yeah.
And in his relationships with China and world leaders, he tends to be different. The second conflict management style is collaborative. It's win-win. So when he's dealing with China, he's trying to find a way for China to win so the U.S. can win, the trade agreement, the thing with North Korea. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
I would say so.
It's called collaborative.
Yeah.
You find out what the other person wants, and you try to find a way to give that to them, and you try to get them to give you what you want. That's a win-win.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't always work. In The Art of the Deal, the book he wrote, he's more on compromise. Compromise is lose-lose. In compromise, President Trump is going to have to give up something to get China to give him what he wants, but China's going to have to give up something to get a deal with the U.S. So in the trade war between China and the U.S., both parties are going to have to give up something. That's my assessment of that situation. It's going to be a lose-lose situation, but in the end, both parties have got something they want. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that you're right with it as well. It's not something I see him doing very easily, though.
No,
because
he
unfortunately,
he doesn't like to give up anything.
Right. Unfortunately, he does have the ego, So I mean, he's got to. It's not. That's no secret, He's definitely got an ego. Even us supporters of his know it. So
that's true. And with NAFTA, that's going to have to be a compromise. There is no win-win there. I don't think there's a win-win there. Now, with the tax thing going on right now as we speak, there is no win-win there because it's going to be a lose-lose. Each side is going to have to give up something to get the other side to agree. And the last thing I heard was Corker is not going to agree.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then you come to accommodate, lose, win. You lose and give the other party what they want. That was Obama's favorite style with foreign countries. The climate agreement, what he gave the rest of the country, China's got 10 years to agree to anything on it. What he did to Cuba, what he did with the 5 people at Guantanamo for the one soldier, he accommodated, bent down to the Saudi Arabian king, bent down to the president of China, and on where he accommodated and gave. He gave in to the other countries of the world. But when it came to Congress, he was competitive. I got the pen here. I'm going to sign executive orders. You guys can just go screw yourself. What do you think about that assessment, Ira?
I think that you're spot on with it, to be honest. That's what I saw too.
Well, then you come to the
he even flat out said in quotes that, well, whatever I want to do, I've got the executive orders. I can do it that way.
Right. Then you come to the 5th one, and that's the most fascinating one. It's called avoidance. Is there ever a time when you avoid a conflict? And in my life, I have witnessed many principals who avoided conflicts instead of taking them on when they should have. Over time, I became more positive about avoiding a conflict because I've learned how to avoid some. There are 4 ways to avoid a conflict, okay? How much time do we have?
We've got about maybe 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, that's enough time. Here's my favorite one. I've used it many times as a principal. And I went to, when I went to the principals and I said, what do you expect? When I went to the teachers, what do you expect of me as their principal? They said, we want you to enforce the rules. And, of course, one of the rules was you must be clocked in by 7:30 a.m. So, and there was a routine of teachers coming in late, and they didn't like it. Okay, so when I told the teachers what the expectations were that I were to enforce the rules, I had the teachers who were coming in past 7:30. I would go up to them and say, the rule is you must be in by 7:30. They said, yeah, but my car wouldn't start. I said, the rule is you must be in by 7:30. I know, but my kid, the rule is you must be in by 7:30. No matter what they came up with, I broken recorded. Broken record. Don't get sucked into the excuses people have when the rules are not enforced, when the rule is broken.
Right.
Because once you start listening to it, now you're sucked in. Broken record is one rule to avoid conflict. You can use it with your kids on curfew. The rule is you must be in by 12 o'clock. Dad, I had this very interesting Dad, the rule is 12 o'clock. So that's one way to avoid a conflict. What do you think about that?
Well, that's sort of the same idea as tough love. I mean, tough love really is that key to that,
That's right. You're right. That is tough love. The second way to avoid a conflict, I call fogging. And I don't know where fogging ever came up. Back in the 80s, I went to a conflict management workshop in Philadelphia, and they used the word fogging. Fogging is when somebody insults you or somebody criticizes you and you don't want to get sucked in. Somebody comes up to you and says, my God, Ira, that was the stupidest thing I ever saw anybody do. And the automatic response almost always is, what do you mean? And here we go. The conflict is on. If you were to say, well, you could say that. Fog it.
Yep. I'm good at doing that kind of thing myself.
Have you used that technique?
I have indeed.
It works, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah, no matter how anybody insults you, you could say, well, you could say that. Or that might be possible. You never agree with the criticism. Never agree with it. You just slough it off. That's the ugliest looking tie I've ever seen. You could say that. Well, that might be somebody's opinion. Never agree with it. Don't get sucked in. When somebody insults you, don't get sucked in. Okay? The third one I call negative assertion. Remember when Trump got called on his interview with that Bush kid about where he put his hand? You can put your hand wherever you want.
Yeah.
And he was called on it. He says, where did you hear that? He should have said, that was the stupidest thing I ever did. Negative assertion. The stupidest thing I ever said. And it would have died. But no. He said, where did you hear that? And out it came, and on with the news coverage. Negative assertion is a very powerful thing because it stops it right in its track. As a school superintendent, I did some stupid things, and when I get called on, that was a stupid thing for me to do. You're right. And usually they said, oh, okay. And that was it. Now, negative inquiry is much more powerful of all of the four ways to avoid a conflict. Somebody says, that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen anybody do, and you say, oh, well, what could I have done that would have made that better? Negative inquiry. So when you get accused of doing something bad, or get criticized, you use negative inquiry. And it says, oh, well, I'm listening. Tell me what you think I should have done. And right away, the person's on your side instead of antagonizing you.
A lot of people like to do that, or like to hear that from somebody that they're criticizing, because then they get a chance to armchair quarterback quite a bit.
Yeah, right.
Which is, which I think is the primary entertainment for a lot of people out there.
Yeah. Well, there are times when you've got to confront a conflict.
Yeah.
Something comes your way, you are the person in charge, and you have to confront it. There are 3 levels of confrontation. We got another 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. There's diplomatic, gentle, and firm. Okay. In diplomatic, somebody says or does something that you don't agree with, okay? And you're going to be diplomatic about it, and you're going to say you're going to deal with it 3 ways. First, you're going to value them as an employee. Second, you're going to disagree. And third, you're going to let it drop or ask them to rethink, or you're going to ask them to change. That's the 3rd level. Okay. Here's the first one. Somebody says something that you don't agree with. You say, you're a valuable employee. I like what you've done here. What you've just said, I don't agree with. Plop. Diplomatic confrontation. Gentle confrontation. You are a valuable employee here. You've been a great contributor. We really like what you do. What you've just said or done, I don't agree with, and I'd like to see you change it. Gentle confrontation. You didn't say, you've got to change. Firm. You're a valued employee. You make a great contributor here. We want to make sure that you continue contributing, but what you've just done, I cannot tolerate. You're going to have to change it. Those are the 3 levels of confrontation. And with that, we talk about the types of conflict in that chapter, which we didn't get into here. And we talked about the 5. There's a survey in that chapter that your employees can use to determine the conflict management style of all of the employees, which is if you're the leader and you've got a lot of people who are avoiding conflict, you need to know that. If you've got a lot of people who are competitive, it helps you understand why they act the way they do. So conflict is a very important part of any organization. So the survey is there if anybody wants to use it. It's in the book.
That's great. I want to make sure that you get enough time to get out where people can find your information, but I want to add in here that the stuff that you've given here tonight, it's really amazing information, and it's stuff that most people, I think, are aware of, at least at some levels for a lot of it, but not consciously aware of it. It's much more of a subconscious action that's going on. But the tips that you've given out tonight, how to shift things from one direction into another, I think is so important. People really need to understand this stuff.
Yeah, everything I do, everything I've written, there is nothing really new. You understood everything I said, right?
Yep, definitely.
It's basically it's common sense, but you've just not thought of it the way I said it, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of theory in this. It's basically it's human relations is all it is. And what's wrong with our schools? It's poor human relations.
Yep.
It's kids who go to school who are not motivated because of the relationships that occur between kids and between teachers and kids and between teachers and the administration. We've got too many good teachers leaving in years 3 through 5 who should be staying. And they're not, because they're not happy because of the way they're treated. Their control needs are not being met. Their caring needs are not being met. And their purpose is lost because the purpose comes down from central office and the State Department.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Where can people find your information? Where would you want people to be redirected to?
Well, they can go to Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble for the books, but they can just get on the web and put in my name, Bulach Cletus R., and my website should pop up. You've got my website?
I do, and I'm going to have it linked up on all of the archives of this show tonight.
Yeah,
so.
I put my website out there. Everything on my website is free. There's 6 surveys that are there, lots of manuscripts, research manuscripts that are written. All of that material is free, so anybody who wants more information can send me an email, and I will send them the surveys if they want them.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I deeply appreciate it. I would love to have you come back on again in the future.
Okay. I'd love to. You're a good interviewer.
Thank you. I'll make sure
to.
I'll send you an email with the links for the archive for the show later on this evening.
I appreciate it.
Have a great night.
I'll put them on LinkedIn and Facebook for you.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you. Have a great weekend. So there you guys go, Dr. Clete Bulach, and a really great information. I love the info that he gave out tonight. I deeply appreciate him coming on, and hopefully you guys got a lot out of it as well. It's a subject that I love talking about. I love talking about how people interact with each other and some of the issues that we have coming up. And don't forget, I've written a book myself on that subject if you guys want to check it out. It's When Good Relationships Go Bad. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and worldwide. You can also find it on my website, originalworlds.com. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break here real quick. And when we come back, I'm going to do something a little bit different. We're going to shift gears a little bit for you guys and change things around a little bit. It's a Friday, and we have a big night ahead. So, hopefully you guys are enjoying so far. 260-494-3937 is the call-in number. Skype line is JDA Film. And as always, we're over in the chat room at lnmradionetwork.com. Make sure to stick around. We'll be right back, folks.
You can listen to the LNM Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from lnmradionetwork.com or talkstreamlive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change. There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on latenightinthemidlands.com, and together, maybe we won't stumble and fall. Have you ever heard of Audible? Audible is a website with hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. They're all high quality, easy to listen to, and, best of all, if you take advantage of a special deal that we've worked out for you, you can get one for free. That's right, a free audiobook of your choice in any genre, simply by going to audibletrial.com/openeyes and signing up for the free trial. It's simple to do, and it would support the shows that we bring to you, and hey, you get a free book out of the whole thing. So why not take advantage of it today? Go to audibletrial.com/openeyes and sign up for the trial. From the author of Silent Steps and Haunted, Finding an Explanation for the Unknown, comes a story so chilling it will haunt you for years to come. Krista is a young woman escaping her past, running away from her family, her traumas, and her God, hoping to find a new life in a different town. But when she is forced to make a horrible choice, she comes to realize malevolent entities have controlled the true darkness she has been a part of. That is when her real terror begins. Penitence is disturbing and evocative. It will tear down the walls between what is real and what is nightmare. Penitence is the new novel by the man called the new master of speculative fiction, Ira Robinson. Find it and all of his books at his website, originalworlds.com. Welcome back to Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson. As always, if you want to call in, 260-494-3937 is our call-in number. Skype line is JDA Film, and we're over in the chat room at lnmradionetwork.com. We're also live streaming over on YouTube at youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network. Love for you guys to come on over and check us out. We've got all kinds of great stuff available for you guys. So, yeah, lots of fun stuff. Anyways, we're going to shift gears. We had Dr. Clete Bulach on here for a little while, and I really am so glad that he came on tonight. I love talking about relationships and interpersonal relationships. It's always a very fascinating topic for me. But I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you guys here. I'm going to be live with Michael Vera here in, about an hour. And we're going to have a roundtable tonight with myself, Michael, Ryan Gable from the Secret Teaching. We're going to have the host of Paranormal Soup, Jason Bland, coming on as well. And I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of talking during that show as well. So I wanted to do something a little bit different here and have a little bit of fun with you guys. As those of you guys out there may or may not be aware, I am an author. I've written a lot of books myself. Had 8 books published, I think, so far. I've got another couple of them coming out. I actually finished writing the Eternals game last week. I'm going to get started on the editing of that one here real soon, but I have my next book already ready to be written. And I'm sure my publishers are now out there thinking to themselves, oh crap. But yes, I'll be sending that to you guys probably in another couple of weeks. Anyways, if you guys go over to my website, originalworlds.com, I've got a lot of free stories available for you. I've got a lot of writing advice, writing prompts, just general inspirational kind of things like that. But I also have a lot of, short fiction, short stories and that sort of thing available there for reading. And I've put together a few little audio drama type things of those stories. And I thought that you guys might like to hear a couple of them. I figured it's a good night to do it. Let's just put it to you that way. So I've got one. This is a new one. I don't think that I've played it out on the air yet, but if I have, that's okay. It's called Mark's Prayer. This story was written a long time ago. It's actually one of the only surviving things from the various apocalypses that have occurred as far as my writing is concerned. So I thought that you guys might enjoy listening to it. So here you go. This is a pretty interesting story, I think, and I hope that you guys like it.
Mark's Prayer by Ira Robinson. The last thing I remember before the wreck is Kelly. I only looked at her for a brief moment, but it seemed to last forever. Her long blonde hair curled and was blown by the wind coming in from the open window. She was really beautiful then. I suppose it was yesterday, but it could have been a lifetime ago for all I know. What I do know is that I'm in a hospital. It must be because of the accident. I haven't told you about it, the wreck, have I? You probably already know about it, but I feel I have to tell you anyhow. Well, as I told you before, I was looking at Kelly just for a second, but that must have been too long. When I looked up through the front window of our Ford LTD, I was going off the other side of the road and into a ditch. I heard Kelly scream, "Look out, Mark!" The next thing I knew, I was waking up, sort of, in this hospital. I thought I needed to talk to someone, and it seems you're the only person, if that's what you are, that can hear me. And where am I when I black out like that? Am I asleep? I heard one time that sleep is a form of death. I suppose you would know, wouldn't you? I mean, you created death and sleep, right? At least that's what I gathered from reading the Bible when I was a kid and what Mama says. My Mama's pretty religious, I guess, and so is Dad. He even puts religion up there with beer and baseball. I mean, that's real high for Dad. He was a pro ball player in his younger days. Hardball Harry, they used to call him. He always gets real puffy and stands proud when he talks about his short-lived but wonderful days with the Chiefs. Mama hates it when Dad gets to talking about baseball. She says, "You'll teach the boys to be bums." The boys being my best friend Max and me. And by the way, did you know that my birthday is in 2 weeks? I will or would be 17. Hot damn. Huh? I'm sorry, excuse the slang, sir. I sometimes have problems with my language. Mama says that dirty words are the devil's vocabulary. I suppose she could be right. Mama doesn't take cussing lightly. She said one day after washing my mouth out with soap, "I'd not go a swearing, boy, if I were you. Makes a real wide hole for the devil to walk right into your soul and take you over." I believed her. A few days later, I heard Mama and Dad fighting downstairs. I heard her cussing up a storm, and I ran downstairs shouting, "Mama, I'll save you." I thought the devil was inside of her. I mean, at least they stopped fighting. They were laughing too hard to go on. And Mom gave me a big hug and thanked me for saving her from Satan, and then we all went out and had some ice cream. I finally heard voices today, though what I heard I didn't like. I know for sure now that this is a hospital. Even though I can't see, since my eyes won't open, my hearing is working just fine. I heard someone heavy walking around my room, and I could hear the beep, beep, beep of the machines. It's really aggravating, that constant droning. I have a little bit of feeling in my body, but not much. I can feel needles poking through my skin. It hurts a little bit, but I'm getting used to it by now. The only problem I have with being here is the breathing tube in my throat. It doesn't hurt real bad, but it's very uncomfortable. I suppose I'll get used to it as well, but not for a long time. I heard someone else walk in. It was a man. He had a squeaky voice. He was talking to the other person, a woman. I don't know. I think she was a nurse. The man, Dr. Christian, said something like, "So how's Mark doing today?" "No change today," she said. "I'm beginning to wonder if he'll be able to pull out of it." Comas, Miss Brooks, are strange things. Who knows what'll happen to him? The doctor was checking all the wires and the tubes sticking out of my body as he talked and said he sustained very severe injury to his head from the crash, so it's really hard to tell. Coma? I mean, me in a coma? I was so shocked I thought I'd die. Well, I don't know if that could really happen. When you're in a coma, you don't really have control over what you do or anything around you, right? The next thing I heard was almost as bad as the news about me. The nurse asked him, "What about the girl?" The doctor took a minute before his reply. I was afraid of what he would say, and finally he took a deep breath and said, "She'll pull through, but barely. Her ribs were broken and a piece of windshield glass sheared through her spinal cord. She'll be paralyzed for the rest of her life." Kelly, why did I have to be so stupid and look away from the road? Why did I drink that beer and then drive? I knew I should have let Max drive, but I didn't want anyone else to drive my car. Why was I so stupid? The phone's ringing. You can hear a soft woman voice answer it, and I realize it's Mama here with me now. Mama, please talk to me. I want to tell you not to blame anyone else but me for this accident. If I could only get the words out.
No, he's still not awake. I wish I could talk to him. I really miss his voice. I wonder if he can hear me talking. Yes, Tom. I'll see you when I come home. I love you too.
I heard the phone click back to the receiver. I could hear the sounds of her feet coming up to the side of the bed. She's been smoking again. You know, she quit smoking those crappy things years ago. Pardon me again. She quit smoking once, but the stress from all this obviously got her started again. I'm sorry for that too, Mama. Wonder if I'll ever be able to pull out of this coma. That word sounds so insensitive. Coma. I've really grown to hate that word. Mama's reading to me now. She must have found that book I was reading before I left that night. Death Tour. Jeez, that's just what I need to hear right now.
I was kneeling down, holding my head. Here, Mary was saying, use this. It was a piece of her dress. It was all blood.
Oh, great, what a nice story. Full of blood. It makes me wonder what Kelly and I looked like after the accident. No, don't think about it, Mark. You're depressed enough as it is. I can feel sadness all around me now. The kid across the hall from me must have died during the night. Or day, I really don't know. It's impossible to keep track of time when I keep blacking out like that. I think I might have an idea of what that blacking out is now. It's just a guess, but whenever I black out like that, could I be dead? When I come back, I feel light, like I've been flying. Isn't that death? I think I'd like to die if it is. No one's here with me this time. This room is so empty now. Wonder what happened to that kid over there. I miss the soft music coming from his radio. He never played it loud. He probably didn't want to disturb me. Little chance of that. I liked the music that he played. Kept my mind off other things, like what I'm thinking right now. If you are all-powerful and all that, I suppose you know if I'm going to live or die, right? I was just wondering. I don't think I would really like to know at this point. Death scares me a little, you know? I hear so much about it, and not much has been good. I tried to move my arms again. I still can't. I suppose it's not really worth trying now. It's not worth the pain I went through trying. I have another question for you. If I am in a coma, I shouldn't be able to hear people talking or talk to you. I mean, isn't it all supposed to be a total void? What I'm doing now goes against all medical reason, doesn't it? I wonder if Max has come in to see me yet. I wish I could hear his voice again. We've been best friends for a long time, you know. Almost 6 years now. He used to hate me, but one day we started talking after getting in a fight, and something just clicked. And now we go everywhere together. We go to all the basketball games, see the latest movies, go to all the parties. Party. That's what got me into this mess. I knew I shouldn't have driven, but I went against everything I've ever known. I don't even know why I went there to begin with. I wasn't in the mood to get plastered that night. My stomach is killing me now. Should that be happening? I mean, they're feeding me through the IV. I heard the nurse talking with Mama a little while ago about it. I wonder how Kelly is doing, too. When Mama was here earlier, she told me she was doing a little better, but she was still unconscious. I hate being like this, not knowing what's going on or what time it is. It seems like I am already dead. I have to say something. I know I'm going to die. I mean, I haven't pulled out of this coma by now. There's really not much chance, is there? I'm gonna die. And it was confirmed in a way by something I heard a little while ago. I heard the doctor come in and talk to Mama. Mrs. Moore, he said, I don't like to say this, but your son's likelihood of survival at this point is very slim. I could almost feel the shock that surrounded my mother. I'll try to explain, he went on. Mark sustained massive trauma to the head, among other things. Even if he pulls out of the coma, he will not be able to function normally. He will, in any event, be brain damaged. We wish to have your permission to turn off life support systems. Mama thought for a long time. I tried to tell her to go ahead. I don't want to live anymore. And Mama made her decision. No. And that was it. She left the room with the doctor. When I woke up this time, I was finally able to open my eyes. I could finally see. I couldn't move my head very much, but it was enough to get a good look around the room. No one was here with me. That's good. I didn't want them to see what I was going to do. I tried to move my arms again, and I found they did move a little bit, just slightly. Was I finally coming out of the coma? I don't care. I only want to do what needs to get done and get it over with. Soon. I tried moving my arms some more, and it felt like trying to control warm rubber. They weren't even arms anymore. But I forced them to come to some kind of half-life. They moved a little more, the right one moving to cover the left. It finally landed. I could barely feel the needle head from the IV sticking in my skin through the haze of pain that was my fingers. But I used the pain to my advantage, and I pulled out the needle, yanking it free from the skin. I could see the blood trickle out of the hole left in my hand, but Care less about it. Head is pounding from the effort. Only one more thing to go. My hand blazed a trail up my chest, slowly making its way to the tube coming out of my mouth. It's the only thing that, at this point, is keeping me alive, forcing air into my burning lungs. It seems like the closer I come to the peace I crave, the more my body is waking up to help. Or is it trying to stop me? Please, forgive me, Lord. Please don't count this against my soul, but I'm doing what I feel is right. And I can only hope you find it right, too. All my strength goes into the final effort, pulling that tube free. There's no pain now. It's only a matter of a minute or two. I'm gonna miss you, Mom. Dad, too. Max, I hope to see you up there soon. Kelly, I'm so sorry for what I did to you, and I can only hope that you forgive me. I'm gonna miss you most of all. I'm coming home now, Lord. Meet me there. So there you guys go. A little bit of story time with Ira for you. That one again was Mark's Prayer, and you can find that as well as all my stories over on my website, originalworlds.com. I'd love for you guys to go on over there and check it out, become a part of my little family over there, my little tribe, I guess you could call us. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I do have another one that I want to do, and I think, yeah, we're going to have enough time for it by the time that the show is over. This one is another one that I love how it turned out. I'm really proud of it, and I love the feedback that I've gotten on when I've played this one before. And for those of you guys that have heard it before, well, you get to hear it again. But we have a lot of new listeners that come in all the time. So don't forget as well, you can find this one over on my website, originalworlds.com, and I hope that you enjoy it. This is 10:38 p.m. 10:38 p.m. by Ira Robinson. As the drink drains into my stomach, burning its way through my throat, all I can think is, how the hell could this be happening? I look down and I see the glass is empty again, so I fill it with the cheap bourbon sitting on the end table next to my bed, and I lift it to the light, staring at the brown liquid in the peace that it's going to bring me. I never was much for drinking. The taste of it just never sat well on my tongue, and I hate the way it feels when it hits my stomach. The subtle sick feeling it evinces is hard to ignore. You call it a remnant of being raised by a booze-addled dad, a whiskey drunk who took out his problems and his fears on me and my mom. Still, the booze is the only thing that helps me to sleep anymore. It's the only thing that keeps the memories from coming back and biting me in the chest, tearing bits of me away with every minute that passes. I'm surprised the bourbon even works after all that's happened. The phone call seemed so innocent. There I had been doing nothing more than watching some stupid flick on the television, just something to pass the time between work and sleep. When it rang, I picked it up and I said the standard hellos. The voice, that deep monotone voice on the other side, made me cringe. It sounded almost like a computer voice, one of those things you call and demands press 1 for English and 2 for some other random language. Obviously fake, but someone tried to program it with a personality. "He's coming for you," that voice said, then click as the other end hung up. I stared at the phone for a minute, wondering if I had really heard what I thought I did, when I just shrugged my shoulder and I put the phone back on the receiver. I turned off the television and I was just putting the remote back on the table beside the chair when the knock on the door came. I stood, instinctively making my way to the front door, and grasped the knob, all before the thought of the phone call struck me. I hesitated at the door, wondering what was going on. Now, I've never been a fearful person. I've always done what needed done without thinking too hard about the consequences. I mean, I've got 2 ex-wives and a heavy stack of bills to prove I don't think much ahead on things. I do them by impulse, something that always drove my poor mom mad. My hesitation at the door lasted only a mere moment before I turned the knob. The man standing there was disheveled, and though it was dark from the sun going down, I could see trails of blood leading from his head to his cheeks. I hadn't even realized it was raining until I saw how wet he was. It was one of those soft rains that doesn't make much noise as it hits the house, but it's going to drench everything exposed nonetheless. "Please," he said, "help me. Someone is trying to hurt me." His voice was high-pitched and a little bit nasally, but whether that was from his walk on the rain or some product of his way of life, I couldn't say. From his appearance, it could have been from a punch or some other blow that made it the way that it was. I looked behind him, trying to discern anything out there, but the light was gone, and I could see nothing past the end of my driveway. I lived at the end of a long road, and there are very few houses along this way, being out in the boonies. It was one of the selling points, actually, that made me jump at buying it. People left me alone, and that was what I preferred. The guy stood there, watching me with hopeful eyes, so I stood aside a bit and said, "Come in, I'll get my phone and we can call the police or something." He came inside, and I closed the door behind him, cutting off the sound of the light rain and the dripping of water from my porch. "Stay here," I said. As I turned away and walked back to the chair I left the phone beside, I picked it up and I turned back around, tapping on the button that would allow me to make the call, and I said, "What's your name?" Just as I started to dial 911. There was no one there. Now, the way my house is built, there's no way he could have passed by me without my noticing him, and the door would have made a sound as it opened. I mean, at the very least, I would hear the difference when it came open with the sound of the rain and water everywhere. Still, I stepped forward and I opened the door, flipping on the porch light, and as it flickered on, I stared out, searching for his movement. He was definitely gone. I closed the door again, wondering what was going on, and I looked down, more out of instinct than anything else, and it struck me that the tile in front of the door was completely dry, barren of any water that would have obviously dripped from the man as he stood there on that spot. Now, I'm a reasonable guy. I'm not given to flights of fancy or even imagination, but I have to admit what happened that night scared the hell out of me. I mean, how could any of this be happening? Another drink goes down, this one more bitter than the last, if you can believe it. I don't think I'll ever really get the taste for this stuff, but it's something I think I'll have to get used to. I just don't know any other way. The phone call must have triggered something in me, I thought. Maybe I had been asleep or sleepwalking or something, and I woke up standing near the door, remembering the last vestiges of the dream as I stood there. I mean, that had to be it. There's not really anything else. That lie helped me to get upstairs and into bed, sleeping off the fear that was still there, subtle, in my mind. Work went normal the next day, and I came home, flipping on the television again, and just sitting, thinking, wondering about the previous night. The weather forecast on the news said it was going to rain again that night. Well, night fell, and I turned off the TV, getting ready to head to my room and pass out. The night before, I'd been pretty restless, and sleep came hard. The ringing of the phone stopped me in my tracks. I picked it up and clicked it on, giving a soft hello. "He's coming for you," said the low, monotone voice on the other end, and then the click as the line was disconnected. I looked at the digital clock on the wall and saw it said 10:38 p.m. The red numbers were big and strong. A moment later, a knock on the door sounded, loud and clear. The echo of it passed through my ears. The guy at the door looked no different than he had the night before. The same disheveled clothing, the same blood dripping down his face from an injury on his head, and the same wetness as the rain came down behind him. "Please," he said, "help me. Someone is trying to hurt me." It was the same nasally, high-pitched voice as the one I had heard him speak the night before. I let him in, heading to the phone in silence after I closed the door behind him, leaving him standing just inside the house. And I picked up the phone and I started to dial 911. I turned around and saw no one there. For 4 nights, the same event happened. Each night, the phone call and then the knock. Phone call and knock. Phone call and knock. I didn't understand what was happening, and each time I heard the knock, I was finding myself more and more frightened. Each night, the rain came, followed by this strange man and the ringing of the phone. It was like I was trapped in a nightmare that just wouldn't end. After 4 nights, I had had enough, and I knew I had to change things. I had to stop this from happening before I lost my mind. The phone call came with the grating monotone voice. The knock, strong and unhesitating as it echoed through the room, came next. I walked to the door, flinging it open. I didn't even wait a moment before I lunged forward, driving the tip of my knife into the chest of the disheveled man. I felt it go in. I felt it falter for a split second as it passed through a bit of tough muscle or cartilage. And when I pulled it out, blood flung across the front of me, and I heard him gasp. The second plunge of the blade caused him to fall backward on his back. He bashed his head into the wood post, and I could hear it crack. Blood began to press its way out of his skull from the gash I opened in his head as more spewed from the deep wound my blade inflicted. Over and over, my knife entered into him, each as deep as my strength would allow me to do. I knew none of this was real. I knew it was all just a play in my head. It all felt satisfying nonetheless as I unleashed all the anger, the fear, and the paranoia the past days had built up. I knew all of this would soon pass, and I would find myself alone again. The man tried to speak, I think, but all I could hear was the life draining from him in a sputter of sounds burbling from his throat as blood filled his lungs to capacity. I stood then, looking down at him as he lay, unmoving except for a twitch in one foot. His eyes were closed, and I found myself deeply relieved that it was all finally, blessedly over. I turned around and went back inside, knowing the man would disappear just as he had done each night before. My hands shook as the blood was washed away, and it's funny how easily it really is to get it to come off of skin, though I knew the clothes would be a different matter. But still, I felt really good at the time I got out of the shower and came back downstairs, my towel in my hand as I patted down my hair. It was not until then that realization struck me. If he was not there, how could there be blood? When I opened the front door, the sound of rain met me. The darkness was deep, but I didn't want to risk turning on the light. That's okay, though, since there was light enough coming from inside the house to show me the body was still there with wet blood all around. A million thoughts were going through my head, but I was numb to most of them. I just didn't want to think. I couldn't think about what I had done. All I could do was react. The shovel in my garage was easy to find, and the rain of the past few days made the ground simple to get through. His body weighed a lot more than I expected, and went into the deep hole I dug with a slapping sound. A bit of air must have been left over in his lungs as a whooshing came from his throat when he hit the bottom. I finished covering him with dirt just as the sun was beginning to come out, although it was murky in the cloudy sky. The rain had let up some, but the cold drizzle had already gotten into every pore of my being, and I was shivering from it. Well, maybe my nerves had something to do with that too, but it was hard to tell. As I take another drink, I wonder if those police officers that showed up at my door the next night could see how fresh the paint on the porch really was. The hairdryer I used to try to get most of the tackiness out of it seemed to do well, but there were still some spots that looked really wet, especially because of the damp air. When they asked me if I'd seen anyone or if anyone had come knocking, I told them, of course, no. They told me about the accident up the road, and they were going to everyone in the neighborhood trying to find the guy who owned the car. They walked away, satisfied, but the whole thing really had me on edge. When I got back inside, I pulled out the bottle of whiskey my ex left in the cabinet, and I took my first drink since my days in college. And it's pretty much been a steady part of my diet ever since. I wonder if any of this had been what started my dad drinking, started him down the path of destruction, which led him eventually to do himself in one night. The rope had been a strong one, and when I found him, I was grateful to see the old bastard hanging there. And yet, looking back on things now and remembering the stories my grandma told me about that side of the family, the ability to sometimes see the future before it even happened, I wondered if one night my own damnable drunk father had ever gotten a strange call in the night. I wonder if he had a knock on his door, and wondered if it happened over and over again until finally, one night, out of desperation and the desire to just make the crazy train derail, he decided to take things into his own hands. I wonder, as I take down another glass of the bitter drink, if his ability to see the future started in the same way. It's 10:38 p.m. again, and without the drink, I don't think I'm ever going to sleep again. So there you guys go, 10:38 p.m. and hopefully you guys enjoyed that little story. It's an interesting one. Someone was asking me as far as Mark's Prayer was concerned. I wrote that story a long time ago, and it was after a friend of mine passed away. He had been in a coma for a long period of time, a protracted time. It was almost 2 months worth of time. And this was back, of course, when I was quite younger, during my teenage years. And after that experience and knowing what happened with him, I started to wonder what was going through his mind while he was in the coma. And I know that some people speculate that, do people actually hear you while you're in a coma? Do you have any awareness? What's going on with it? And I'm one who firmly believes that absolutely, even regardless of whether they're in a coma or not, they're still aware of what's going on around them. They're still aware of the surroundings, and they just are locked for some reason in a body that doesn't want to wake. So I wrote Mark's Prayer, I guess you could say, almost as a catharsis to deal with some of the grief that I was going through at that time. And that's what it was born out of. I don't know. Some people ask me where I get ideas for stories, and I will say a lot of them are, as I was speaking about to my guest earlier, a lot of them come from me just asking weird questions like, what if? And that's actually one of the pieces of advice that I give to authors that are seeking, how to come up with ideas or how to figure out a plot to do with their story and that kind of thing. I ask the question, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? Okay, well, if that happened, what if this happens? And just sort of all stems and flows from there. And it's an interesting process. It's one that's been very effective for me over the years, and I think that it's worked for a lot of other people when I've given them the advice and they've tried it out. They've come back and said, yeah, it definitely helped them out to create something new, something better. So yeah, what if my friend actually was aware of what was going on around him, and that sort of birthed the idea for Mark's Prayer. I do have some other audio stories that I'm going to be putting together here over the next week. I was going to put some more of them together here over the past few weeks, but I ended up getting into writing the Eternals game, which is a paranormal fantasy, I guess is the best way to classify it. It's speculative fiction, of course, as the genre that I tend to always do. But it's more of a paranormal fantasy, sort of a story about a boy who is a major part of a game that's being played for control of the universe. And it's an interesting book. I think it's going to be one that a lot of people are going to really respond to. There's a lot of cool elements that are in it that I decided to go with it. And so far, the people that have read it have said that it's been a really good story. So I think that everybody out there is going to really like it. I'm going to be doing the edits on that here in the next couple of weeks. I've been taking a break from it. I finished it up last week, and usually I take a few weeks between writing a novel before editing it, so that I come at it with a little bit of fresher eyes, so to speak, and be able to edit it more effectively. So that's going to be it for me. That's going to do it for us tonight here on Open Eyes. Don't forget, I am going to be a guest tonight on the roundtable over there at L&M, or for the Late Night in the Midlands show with Michael Vera. So you guys will hear me again in about a half hour if you're over there at the L&M Radio Network. And hopefully you guys are. If you're not, make sure you guys head on over to lnmradionetwork.com. And while you're over there, you know, we fell really, really, really short of our goal for donations to keep the station going here for December, and we're pretty desperate to need the help here. So if you guys would be so kind, please hit the donate button. Please hit the subscribe button over there at lnmradionetwork.com and help to keep this radio station on the air. If you guys liked what you heard tonight, if you like what you hear from my shows, make sure you guys help to keep this show going. This is our flagship network. It's the primary place that we are. Of course, we're all over the world, but that's where we want to be. That's our home base, so to speak. So make sure you guys keep on supporting us, and it would be deeply appreciated. I will be live again next week, as I so often am. If you guys want to tune in, we'll be back on Thursday with Brothers in Arms with Joe. We'll have him here next week as opposed to yesterday. Again, sorry about yesterday with him not being on. But, you know, it is what it is. It turned out to be a really great show with Daryl, and hopefully you guys tune in for that. If you missed it, make sure you guys catch it in the archives on my website, openeyesnetwork.com. You'll find the archive for this show over there as well here in just a little bit. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/C/openeyesnetwork. And, yeah, hit the subscribe button on there, and you guys will get informed of when we come out with a new show. Make sure you guys like this video as well, because that does help people to find it in the search engines a little bit easier when they're looking for good stuff to listen to. And hopefully this is good stuff to listen to. And if it's not, why not? Anyways, so if you want to send me an email, feedback at openeyesnetwork.com is my email address. And we're on social media everywhere. Open Eyes Network on all of the different social media platforms. And if you want to find my books, again, those are over at my website, originalworlds.com. Come on over and check it out. I think you guys will be really impressed with what I have over there, hopefully. I will be back live next week on Open Eyes. My next guest is going to be Nathan Segal, and it's going to be a very interesting show. I was a guest on his show, The Thought Hackers, a couple of months ago, and I thought I'd have him on my show as well. And he is a really, really interesting guy. We talk a lot about trauma and how to recover from traumas and PTSD and so on and so forth. It's going to be a really good show, so make sure you guys tune in. Until next time, keep safe out there, have fun, and thank you so much as always for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.